Just blinked.
So, I mean, we're going to wait a little bit, but we are officially live. That's it.
Yay! First ever YouTube live. Your second one, right?
Well, technically speaking, I used to be on LinkedIn Lives, but it's definitely
Okay.
second live where I'm the host.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes. And
We just signed.
of course, hello. I was going to do green eyeshadow, then it morphed
I
into.
love it. You're wearing one of my favorite colors, like teal, turquoise. Love, and it complements you very well.
Thank you. So I can see that we're starting to get people join. Come on. Hi. If you
Hello,
hopefully
welcome.
into YouTube, please give us a shout and a hello, because unfortunately this isn't like LinkedIn where we can see your name. So please feel free to say hi. But we're just going to give everybody a couple of minutes to join, and then we will be able to kick off.
Sweet. But yes, thank you for taking the time. Hopefully you've got some food to hand and you're enjoying some lunch whilst you tune into this live. So thank you for joining. I literally just had my my brunch, which was porridge, to keep me going through this hour.
I don't know what it is about you and I talking that I've always just had a burger. I've literally just
Have
had a
you
burger.
just had? I'm wondering if it's the same time last week that we spoke, and it's like a continuous thing every Thursday. It's burger day for you.
I don't know what's wrong with me.
You said it was good though, so I don't blame you.
Hi, Ronique. Thank you.
Hey, Ronique.
Hi, Dion. Thank you for joining. Hi, Janet.
Hey, Dion. Hey, Janet. I know, doesn't it look so good? She needs to come and do my makeup. When are you coming to my house after this lockdown?
I will be there as soon as I can. I'm dying to come. And it's killing me that I can't come. When I say it's killing me that I can't come back. I'm waiting.
I know. We hope that this is all over very soon. We are not streaming, are we, on LinkedIn? It's just here on our YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Just on YouTube.
Just on YouTube, Dr. Soul.
Hello.
Hey, Aisha. Thank you for joining.
Hi, Rosalind. Thank you also.
Hi, Rod.
Hi, Nina. Thank you for joining.
Hey, Nina. Thank you. Yes, first time doing this. It's really interesting to see how the interaction comes up and being able to see people's comments. So yes, this will definitely be an interactive conversation. Hey there, Afia. I hope I said your name correctly.
And look at.
Hey, Julian from Ghana. Yes, my homeland. Repping Ghanaians. Welcome. Akwaba, as we would say in Twi, Akwaba. Welcome.
I like it. Well, we're very international. Germany, we've got the UK, we've got.
Yes.
We're doing
Love
it.
That.
Right.
Love that. The beauty of technology, right?
Exactly.
We can still remain connected even during this season.
Right. And it's the beauty of technology that we can even get to know people who we probably we've got to know each other purely on LinkedIn, and it really just showed the power of online platforms, because in day-to-day life we may know each other, but having this wonderful platform that we can use together to get to know each other. Oh, Dr. Salt in Edinburgh is
welcome from Edinburgh. Hi, Martina. I just saw you made a note as well, so thank you for joining. Yes, we literally are across the islands, across the country, across the world. Love it.
Exactly. And it's one of those situations where, the reason for this, your journey, your purpose is manifold, but primarily because so much has happened, especially as Black people. So much has happened this year. So much has really given us the courage to start to speak out about what our truth is, to speak out about uplifting each other, to speak out in general.
Yeah.
Why I've reached out to amazing people in my network is because 2020, for many reasons, is always going to be a turning point. And the question will always be, when you look back, what did you do, and what decisions did you make, and how did you decide to make an impact? And to make an impact, of course, we don't have to all be Black, but in this context, there's something very, very specific about being a Black woman. Being Black in general, but also being a Black woman, what that looks like and what that fight looks like. So I came across Sandra's profile and I was like, wow, she looks like she's doing some super interesting things.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Get in contact, she dropped an absolute bomb on me, and a gem is that she's an author of the book Sankofa. So
Yes.
without further ado, Sandra, I hand over to you to give us a little bit of an intro about who you are, but also the meaning and the reason why you decided to write your book.
Yes. So yeah, as you mentioned, firstly, first and foremost, Leanne, thank you for having me. You're also an incredible Black woman, trailblazing in your industry, and also just being able to create a space like this where we could come together and just share our experiences with others. So thank you for putting this on. So yeah, as you mentioned, I released a book called Sankofa earlier this year, literally right before the first lockdown in the UK. And Sankofa, as I mentioned earlier, I'm from Ghana originally. Sankofa is a part of our Adinkra collections, which are just different symbols associated with different meanings. So specifically, Sankofa means to return to the past and get it. So basically, what that means is to look back over your life and be able to handpick those things that have really contributed to who you are today, and how can you use those learnings and those insights to carry you forward. So I've got a copy of my book here, so I'm going to do a shameless plug if I may. So this is the book Sankofa, and what it is a collection of poems, also a collection of exercises for professional development, because I'm a poet as well, and also I am a coach. So I've literally been able to bring those two worlds together and put it in this very short bite-sized book. You can get it on Amazon or also my website as well, which I'll share the details later. But yeah, all in all, that is what I'm doing with Sankofa at the moment.
No, and that's really good, because I think, in terms of focusing on, Black women and where we are, there's a lot for us to think about, and there's a lot for us to digest in terms of how we take a break. How do we find that space inside of ourselves to really focus on making progress? And I think this is what's so beautiful. This year's been a difficult year, no question about it. But this is what's beautiful, and what's coming out of this year is this connection that we're all finding with each other within being Black women, but also just generally being Black. It's
Yeah.
that outlet that we have amongst ourselves to actually say, well, hey, it's not always easy. It's not always as beautiful. I'm not always strong. Sometimes I'm vulnerable. Sometimes I'm hurting, but also finding an outlet to be able to share that with each other, and
Yeah.
finding the ways and the methods to also make changes in our lives. And I think that's what I liked about the principle of your book, is poetry being very restorative, arts being restorative, but also combining that with exercises.
Yeah.
Um, to be able to kind of come forward, because in the grand scheme of things, if your purpose, you can talk more about it, but
Yeah.
my purpose is to elevate, 100% elevate Black women and help us to come forward, be it personally, be it professionally. And once you find that level of your purpose, everything that you then do dictates how you move. So how did you come to that point in your career of finding your purpose in order to make an impact?
Yeah, great question. I think when I hear the word purpose, and for some people on this live, they may think it's going to be this clear epiphany moment where you're just like, aha, it's this exact thing, and you can pinpoint it there and then. But for me, it was a gradual progression. It was identifying through my work experiences in my career journey, like what are the things that I have absolutely loved, and what are the things that I've clearly distaste and need to let go of. And it's just been that fine tuning along my journey to take away the things that perhaps are hindering me and I don't necessarily gravitate to, and honing in and deepening the things that I love, like the likes of poetry and coaching, and similar to you, helping people, Black women within the space, to help them see their light so that they're able to just move forward and own it completely. So for me, it's been a gradual journey. And I think a lot of it connects to the things that I genuinely enjoyed as a child. Like I enjoyed speaking a lot. I enjoyed writing songs, playing the guitar and things like that. So for me to be able to go back and reconnect to the things that I loved as a child, I've seen how that has translated in my adulthood life, where I'm able to, bring forth Sankofa as a book that combines poems that some of them are so old, they're backdated right until my teens. And so I think when it comes to figuring out your purpose, for me, it was about identifying what were the things that I loved, what were the things that played to my strengths, and what do I want to be known for once I move on? What would my legacy look like? And that for me is bigger than what I can do for myself, but how I can pour into other people. And I think that's really helped me identify that this purpose is about how I pour into others and what they can gain from it in order for them to move forward in whatever it is that they are trying to accomplish.
No, and I think you've made several good points. So I'm going to have to kind of stop, digest, and go back. I think the first one is, and I 100% agree with you, is that you don't have to find your purpose immediately. It's not something that is going to hit you over the head like this, and
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be that eureka moment. It can be
exactly.
a very gradual thing, because we've spoken about this before. There is something very, very clear about, especially being children of, let's say, Windrush generation or grandchildren of Windrush generation. There's
Hmm.
very, very poignant and very clear about security. So sometimes
Yeah,
that level of creativity or that level of freedom that you may wish you had to be able to do something else is sometimes hampered by that need to be secure, that need to be grateful for your job. So
yeah,
that life experience can sometimes kind of take you off your path, which isn't a bad thing, because your path goes in the way it goes for a reason. Sometimes we don't.
exactly.
Sometimes it's like, hold on, how did I get here? Why am I doing this? But it doesn't mean that it has less meaning.
Right,
It's
right,
kind of there's no, I've kind of come to realize in the course of my life is that there's no such thing as wasted time, and there's no such thing as wasted experience, just because it's
exactly.
some total of things we usually land with work and questioning and keep going back and looking and assessing and analyzing what we're doing. We get to the point where we want to get to.
Yeah,
This is caveated, heavily caveated with, it's not easy. And
it
sometimes
isn't.
it's so difficult. You don't know where to start. You don't know how to start even. And it can be not, your purpose may not reveal itself, but it can still be somewhat of an epiphany moment, or several
Hmm.
moments where you realize what you thought you were here to do isn't in fact what you thought you were here to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I can definitely speak to that in terms of, for me, my career background is in recruitment, and I sort of jumped into recruitment unexpectedly. And what I loved about it was helping candidates find awesome jobs that they could really enjoy. However, when I got exposed to understanding more about my strengths, so I did several strengths assessments, and they really highlighted like, where are the areas that I shine? Where are my natural talents? Where am I gifted? And I noticed I was underusing those in that environment. And that's where I was able to explore the likes of coaching and realize that my strength lended itself much better to that world. And
Mm,
off the back of that, that has opened up doors to where I have just recently completed my master's in positive psychology, which, whilst I was on my master's, during my master's, I should say, is when I completed Sankofa. And a lot of what I was learning from that,
mm,
from my studies, I poured into this particular book. So it just naturally unraveled itself when I made that pivot. But like you said, it is a staggered journey, and it's not necessarily an easy one, because I quit my job at that point in time when I discovered that, recruitment's no longer for me, and I had no job lined up, had a mortgage, I didn't have anyone else paying my bills. So there was a lot of hardcore sacrifices that I made to dive straight into the deep end, and just prayed that I would be able to stay afloat and ride that wave, which, like you said, going against the tide, it's difficult, but at the same time, I knew what it was that I wanted to do. And because I was so clear about that, for
mm.
whatever difficulty would come my way, I knew it was only going to strengthen and stretch me and make me better for the direction that I was heading in.
And I think, I mean, when I tell you hats off for making the jump. I mean, I made a jump without a job, but it wasn't because I knew what my purpose was. It wasn't actually to do with any of that. It was more because I'd reached the point where I was no longer feeling as though my mental health was worth it. I
Mm,
I'd worked so hard for so little reward. There wasn't the acknowledgement of the work I was putting in. There was an acknowledgement of the fact that I was working crazy hours to deliver. There were so many things where I just got to the point where I was just like, you know what? It's enough. And
yeah,
there wasn't a safety. Well, actually, there's always the safety net of having your mom. But
Right.
there wasn't that safety net to say, I know where my next job's going to come from. I know how this is going to
Mhm.
work out. But then at the same time, at that point in my life, I also didn't have two kids where you have to think a little bit, a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but you're right, it's making that jump out of a known world into the unknown is one of the scariest things you can do, even when you believe, even when you
Yes.
believe that what your purpose is the right thing to do, what you want to do, that's the right thing to do. You could do it for the end of your days. You
Yeah.
still have that fear, that knot in your throat, that knot in your stomach that says, but what if this doesn't work?
Exactly. Exactly.
Isn't
Uh,
it? Even though everything tells you that it is it, there's that fear that says, should I really be doing this?
yeah. Yeah. And that was a dialogue that I had internally, that I battled with at first, because it is something where on one side I'm clear, I believe, I know it's possible. On the other side, because you don't have the evidence of it and it hasn't been proven because it is unknown, you can't fully quantify that this is going to work, right? And so there is that tug of war that I had for a long period of time. And even when you eventually see things starting to progress, it's, for me, it's almost because I worked in the startup world and everything is so fast paced, because I was forced to slow down. I very much literally wanted to speed it up. I wanted to speed up that process. I almost didn't want to go through it. I wanted to skip and just get to where I knew I was able to really do well. And not being able to, I felt like I was slowed down intentionally, because when you're slowed down and when you're made to be still, you're really, really having to pay attention to what matters to you. You know, we can be in this, and I think we spoke about this last week, be on autopilot mode where you're just moving through the paces, doing what needs to be done. Society says do this, by this age, you should have that. All of these, right? We're going with the wave, right? But if you want to go against the grain and you're creating and forging a new path for yourself, it is unfamiliar, but at the same time, it's going to cause you to be still and to sit with how you're feeling and to pay attention to what it is that you're experiencing, so that you can get clear on it and just know that this is something that's going to teach you, so that you're ready for whatever next is, whatever that next challenge is, whatever that next stretch is. Because had I not gone through that at that time where I quit my job and no job lined up, thinking that was the worst thing that could probably ever happen to me, I would have never have dared to even believe that I could release a book or, be able to be a coach. And what happened as soon as I stepped into that world, it became very organic in terms of my journey and my progression in coaching and the opportunities that I could show forth. And that was just that reinforcement to say, you know what, I'm in the right place, because this is just literally starting to flow so organically. And I could really just, and I felt at one with it because I knew it was playing to my strengths as well.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said, and I think this is something that we as Black women experience a lot, which is our strengths are often ignored within the
Mm,
workplace, which then leads
yeah,
us to doubt our capabilities. So, you're good with people. I know I'm good with people. I know, as you said, you did work on your strengths, so you understood fundamentally where your strengths lie. But what you
yeah,
think is that in your day-to-day working life, you weren't given the opportunity to use them. So it's like, what you're good at, just like a language, if you don't use it, you interminably lose it. So then you end up
exactly.
in this particular situation where you can neither sell your strengths because you don't use them, but you also don't feel comfortable selling your quote unquote weaknesses. So you end up in this land of betwixt and between because you don't have
Hmm.
the opportunity. And as you said, the only real way sometimes is to take yourself out of the situation in order to be able to focus on your strengths so that you can move forward. And
Yeah,
that can be the most difficult part because life still goes on in the meantime. It's like what you said,
right.
the realities of mortgages to pay, houses
Yep.
to pay for, cars potentially to pay for, all these financial things that sit on you that almost hinder you from being able to see your life with clarity because
Hmm.
you got so tied into these are my strengths, but I don't necessarily have the correlative qualification. To be a coach, you don't have to have I'm a coach on my CV. It's
Yeah.
that level of was Tony Robbins a coach before? Maybe he was. Anyone can tell me this, by the way. Maybe Robbins wasn't a coach before he became a coach. He developed his own method of thinking.
Mm,
But the point is, sometimes we hold ourselves back because everything else tells us we shouldn't do it because it sits on our strengths and we're not allowed to really use them in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And back to your point about, what we're telling ourselves, that internal narrative, as Black women, as Black people, what internal narratives are we ingesting? What are we taking in from our environment? So that's family, homes, work environment, what we're taking in from social media. What influences us is what we absorb at the end of the day. So that for me, I'm very intentional with what I take in. I'm very intentional with how I share my energy and what I allow to influence my energy. And I'm very protective about that because there is so much out there that can distract you and also pull you away from your purpose and from what it is that you should be focused on. So paying attention to that internal narrative of what you say to yourself, what words are you using to uplift yourself? Are you using words to uplift yourself, to empower yourself? Because it has to come from you first and foremost before it can be extended out. We can't lean on external people or situations to provide that for us because for that's a liability. What if that individual's not there or that situation's no longer there? Then what? So you need to, for me, it's very important that I feed myself with things that will uplift me in terms of my own well-being and my own mental state. It's not always easy because I'm not always in the mood for something happy or positive. Like, let's keep it real. It's not.
Life is just life, and sometimes you wake up in the morning, you're like, I don't like my face. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to do
Exactly.
Everything's rubbish. Just leave me alone.
Yeah, I just want to duvet day with some popcorn and I'm good and put on Netflix and let me just chill. Like I really don't want to do anything else outside of that. And that's equally fine. It's that there is no right or wrong in terms of our feelings. They're always evolving, right? And they're always changing. I think what it is about your awareness in how you respond to them, right? And what you do to yourself in that situation, how you respond to what you're hearing in your head. Do you berate it? Does it own, that dialogue? Does it become your story, or do you challenge it, or do you try and introduce an alternative, perhaps positive affirmation that can flip that on its head so that you are able to see yourself develop? Because what we're saying to ourselves in our minds is definitely showing up in our lives, and that's something that we've got to make the connection to.
And I think this, I will tell you, like, I absolutely 100% believe in positive affirmations, but truth be told, took me a long time to get there too, because I just thought that was not gonna lie, I was just like, this is not the kind of thing that Black people have time to be doing. Me, I don't have time for this mumbo jumbo positive affirmation.
I love it.
Literally, that's how I genuinely felt.
Yeah, which is valid.
Right, there are so many, and it comes down to sometimes not understanding or not knowing the history of loads of things. If we talk about yoga, for example, yoga's into this thing where you have to be skinny. That wasn't the point of it. And as you said, it's when we decide, when I decide to make a decision, especially now at this point in my life, my decisions are made I can't always be reactive. It can't just be a decision where I go, yes, I'm going to do this. Because if I'm fundamentally making a decision that's going to impact my life on a larger scale, I need to understand the root of it, the history of it. Why am I doing it? Because looking back into your past is as much about looking back into your physical past as it is looking back into the history of methods of thought, looking back into the history of affirmations, looking back into the history of wearing, I don't know if you wear amulets or charm bracelets or whatever it might be. It's not just about the today. It's always about going back and having a real understanding. Is this belief system that something that really resonates with me as a person?
Right. And is it serving you as a person? Right. And those are the questions, like you said, about going back and connecting the dots to where you are now. It really is about, I think just literally as Aisha said, the world in her words, like you can have these affirmations, but if you are conflicted with an internal narrative where your beliefs are contradicting those affirmations, then it will be hard for you to buy into what you're saying. So there is a level of unlearning and rewiring that's got to take place with limiting beliefs. And then that creates space to introduce affirmations that you can slowly start to transition and embody and start to believe, because you've done the self-work, you've done the declutter, which when we think back to our history, there is so much as Black people that we, carry today that our ancestors before us have literally just passed on, and it's just generational, right? And it's like you have to understand that, give that context, and see where do I fit into that context. And when you know that and understand that, then you can see what role you have to play. And like they've passed us the baton. Okay, you have it in your hand now. What are you going to do with it? And how are you going to pass that on now to the next generation?
And I think it's also manifold, because how are you going to pass it on to the next generation is also about, it's not about having to be, a revolutionary and leading a movement. It's also how you transfer that and transmit it in your daily life. How am I, and this is this is like a fundamental of my coaching program is, how are you showing up to the world consistently? Are the beliefs that I say I have in my heart, the ones that I shout out loud and proud at home, am I showing that when I go into the office? Am I showing that when I'm going on a date? Am I showing that when one of my closest girlfriends said something and I don't like it? Or am I just playing a role outside? Because it's also that level of divisive nature that also causes an internal pressure, because you're also not being true to yourself. So it's not always about being a massive revolutionary and changing the world at large. It's also about changing the ecosystem in which we also exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. Like when you talk about roles, the different hats that people are wearing, whether it's a wife hat, you're wearing the mother hat, co-worker, different labels that we associate ourselves with. But outside of that, when we remove those labels, when we remove that mask, let's say, who is that individual behind that? Is that somebody that you will still recognize? Once they take all those labels off, can I still recognize you as you are? And I think that is what, for me, in terms of my journey with life and how I've seen the emergence of my career and also my creative element come together, is because I've started to take off the labels and take off the hats and the roles that I wear, because I understand showing up in different environments requires different aspects of me. But at the same time, I want people to still recognize, oh, that's Sandra, because even in these different environments, and that's really important.
But how hard is it as well? It is so incredibly hard.
Yeah.
Because when you make those changes, or when you decide, hey, I am going to live authentically as me, every level, you making the change changes the dynamic of every single person you come in contact with.
Yeah.
And that is just so difficult, because you're going to go through this transition phase. And I've seen it myself. I've seen the pushback. Where I've clearly established my boundaries. And because people haven't been used to me having boundaries, the question comes, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, but you've changed. And when someone says you've changed, most of the time we've taken it negatively.
Yeah.
But it's that moment where you have to say, I have changed. That's what the difference is. It's so hard to own the change, because we are all creatures of habit. We're comfortable to such an extent with what we know.
Yeah.
That when the change comes, there comes a rub. And it doesn't mean half of you also has to, and I mean, I've had to accept, and I've seen it in my life, that not everybody starting on the journey with me is still here with me now.
Right.
Because my change, it's not been liked. And that can be friends of 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 5 minutes. But it's not easy to let that go.
Yeah. I have like a prime example sort of pop to mind of just like you said, about people not necessarily who you started the journey with will be here with you. And that for me has been a challenge, where I've had friendships that I've naturally just shedded. Like the season has come to an end, and it is something that perhaps I never thought would be possible at all, and something where I felt like these individuals will be with me to the end of time. And recognizing that in of itself, there is nothing right or wrong about that. It is literally as is. Things go through seasons. We go through seasons naturally as a world. We go through autumn, spring, summer, etc. And so recognizing there are also episodes in our life which will naturally come to an end. And for me, I think what's been the most difficult part is almost rejecting that truth and rejecting that it has come to an end, and almost trying to fight for it to continue on. But I realized that it's almost like you can be on the same train and one person has gotten off and gotten onto a different path, and that train is now routed elsewhere. And that's fine. Maybe we just need to readjust how our friendship sort of lends itself, or perhaps it's just a case where it comes to an end. And so that's been a definitely difficult one for me to learn how to adjust and accept, but it's something that I'm starting to get better at.
I remember, just on that line, and I can't tell you when it is exactly, but I remember a few years ago, I read an article, and it was talking about the myth that underlies the basis of friendships. Meaning, when we watch television programs, and this also goes to your point about being intentional as to what influences us. When we watch television programs, we're really taught, there's this girl and she has her crew, and they've been friends since they were kids, and now they're in their 30s, and they're going through stuff, but ultimately they always stay friends because that's what friendship is about. And I realized that when friendships that I had broke down, I took them as a personal failure. I took
Same.
something wrong.
Yeah.
And once I realized it was nothing about being wrong, I was able to look back at those moments where, what did they say? You have to separate to elevate. And I think Aisha said something
Nice.
you have to drop those people in order to. I realized also, and this isn't shade, this is just true talk, I was the person who needed to be dropped. I recognized back that other people were making progress in their life, and they dropped, and rightly so. At the time, I didn't get it. At the time, I didn't understand, like, what have I done wrong?
Right.
It wasn't anything wrong per se. It was more about the fact that they were growing and moving in a different direction, and I wasn't there. It doesn't mean, in some cases, in some of the friendships, we've converged again.
Right.
And we've met. It's not the same friendship as before because we've changed as people. But the point is, we've converged again.
Yeah.
But it's about not taking it into, not internalizing it as a failure, not believing what I tell you that friendships always last forever and ever, because they don't always. It's accepting that as part of your change, as you evolve, everything around you has to adjust, and some things are squeezed out because there's no more room for it, and some things find their natural position, but it shouldn't stop us from evolving. I think it's kind of getting into the mindset of accepting that this is going to happen organically and we can't control it.
Right, exactly. And I think, if anything, where we are bruised or affected by that, it's more our egos, right? I think it's more our egos sort of showing up in that moment and being offended by what's happened. But we are not our egos. It's just a version of us that sort of shows up whenever something negative happens, or how we might respond to something that we dislike. So I think once we get over that and we recognize that our ego is at play, then it allows us just to move through and just accept, like you said, we've outgrown and there's not room for that particular person in that moment in time. Because like you said, you can move on 4 or 5 years down the line and perhaps reconnect, and that will just naturally show up in that way. Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's that part about, and I think particularly for me, especially this year, because obviously 2020, I mean, we'll just keep. In the course of this year, I have found my own voice. There's never. It's crazy because I genuinely have always been unapologetically Black. However, I'd never really vocalized any of the issues that happened or surrounded being Black, because I didn't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable. And this is also an interesting process to see that as you decide to openly claim your Blackness, who is willing, who is okay being, and they don't even need to be Black people. They can sometimes be. But who is okay with you speaking out and saying, well, hey, this isn't right? Who is okay with you saying, hold on, we need to talk about this. We need to correct as Black people. You need to come correct as non-Black people. And that's also been an interesting journey, because even in the course of this year, I've seen changes in people's behaviors that I would have thought would have been like, yes, this is something really good. And that's also been an eye-opener. Talking, because I'm not going to stop talking.
Own it.
I'm not going to stop talking until we are up front and center.
Yeah.
And then When that happens, then my work here is done. But up until that happens, we still
The
have to keep
conversations must continue.
right, and we still have to, we have to keep looking forward as to how we're going to be positive. But as
Yeah,
there's so much for us to learn from the past, and there's so much for us to learn from each other. But we also
yeah,
have to keep our eyes on how we're going to come forward and how we're
yeah.
going to direct the conversation positively to mobilize change.
Yeah, definitely. It needs to, like I said, the baton has been passed on to us. What are we going to do with it? At the end of the day, it's important that we acknowledge what's happening right now in our world and also what has happened. At the same time, we've got to check in with ourselves and think, okay, well, what can I do here with this? We can talk about it, we can complain, we can express our feelings, which are all completely valid. But at the same time, it's once we have had the space to do that, then what comes next? What comes next? What is it that you as an individual, and like you said, you don't need to be a trailblazer, like creating a movement. It's not about size here or the how grand it is or how small it is. That's irrelevant. It's literally just being able to identify what piece of the cog do you play, in the wider picture of humanity, of how we can make our contribution so that we're able to help shift the needle forward positively in that right direction, because the next generation is already coming. And for me, a lot of my motivation stems from my 2-year-old niece. She's half Tunisian, half Ghanaian, and I wonder what her experience is going to be like as she grows up in the world that we are currently living in. What is it that I want to ensure that she has in place, so that she's ready to make the changes she needs to make for the world at her point in time.
Right. And I think there's another thing about talking about the anger. It's like we have to find a way to use the anger as fuel. Otherwise, it will just burn us down. You sit
Yeah.
on it's going to burn us down. It won't hurt anybody else besides us.
Right. Right.
And that's why, that's why it's so important that we find ways to build down our stress, that we have conversations, that we look to each other to strengthen each other, to also
Yeah.
to positively look forward, to kind of say, well, you talked about your niece, I've got 2 children.
Hmm.
What legacy am I going to leave behind? And when we talk about legacy you're going to leave behind, it might just be something as simple as, I've spoken about this before, that when you're the first person in your family to work in the corporate world, there's so
Yeah.
much that you don't understand. You don't understand how that game works. You don't understand. No, and if there's nobody black in the company before you, they
Yeah.
can't explain to you the dynamics of how all of this stuff works. You just know that people left and right in you of you who started after you are getting promoted, and you're like, hold on, what's going on here?
Right. Hmm.
Something, when I say simple, it's simple yet important. It might be something as simple as that. Being able to share with the new generation of young black children coming up, how does this work?
Yeah. How do you navigate?
Because the reality is that the changes that we hope to see may not be in our lifetime. It may not
Right.
in your nieces and my children's lifetime. It may come if we've been oppressed for more than 400 years. It's not going to necessarily
Hmm.
happen within 10 that everything's going to be fine, all
Exactly.
good and dandy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's looking at those fundamental things to be able to make changes there in order to kind of help the next generation. We might not have a place when your niece goes to work, when my kids go to work, that people still say, oh yeah, we think you can do the job irrespective of what you look like. We might have to say to them,
Hmm.
this is how you negotiate it.
Yeah.
I have to put myself in a better position to be able to make those networks, make those links. But it's, as you said, it's small ways that can have impact
Yeah.
in the ecosystem and further. Because the
Yeah.
fact that we're having this conversation means that whatever I know, whatever you know, we're sharing that and we're cross-pollinating, and that goes to your niece and it goes to my kids. And
Yeah.
that's
Exactly.
what I find so beautiful right now about us being able to sit down and talk is, irrespective of our geographical location, the one thing that we're doing is still sharing information. I
Yeah.
didn't mean that to rhyme. It did though, but
I liked it. Got some poetry in you.
thank you. And
Yeah.
that's the thing, we can still share, and it's that thing about also believing in abundance. There is enough
Mm.
Let's live abundantly. There is enough to go around. It's
More
not
than enough.
right. Let's not do this scarcity thing. Let's not believe the scarcity campaign that there's only
Yeah,
space for one Black woman at the table, or there's only
yeah,
space for one Black person at the table. Let's live abundantly. Let's
yeah.
share, because only by sharing will we truly even learn more.
Exactly, exactly. It's almost like a fast track course by having these organic conversations where people can just take what resonates to them and apply it in their own worlds. And then, like you said, it's cross pollinating. They can now carry that into their own hubs where they're having their own connections with their friends and family, etc. Because it is important that we vocalize our learnings,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, everything that we have been exposed to is not just for our own keeping. It's for us to pass on. It's for us to share it and put out there. For me, it's important that once people realize their strengths and their gifts, and they know how to sort of play with it, recognizing that your gift is not just for you. It's not just for you to keep and hold on to. It is somebody out there is waiting for you to share your gift. And that can just be the one person. It's not about numbers. It's really just about how do you transfer that? How do you now pass that on? How do you continue to pass on that baton?
Yeah, no, 100%. I like that though, that somebody is waiting for your gift, because
Mm,
sometimes that's what, you know, and maybe the person who's waiting is you yourself. Maybe
yeah,
like we look so much. When I say look so much, you think about helping other people, but maybe by strengthening yourself, you're able to help other people in ways you didn't even think were possible.
yeah,
And
definitely.
and one of the other things that still really resonates with me that you've said, several times in the course of this conversation is hone in on your strengths.
Yeah,
Because I don't know which business person said this, but they were like, listen, don't waste time working on your weaknesses, because they will only ever get marginally better, and they will
yeah,
never much
tiny.
right. They won't have as much as of an impact as if you improve on your strengths. Improve
Yeah,
on your strengths, that's it. But it is very, very difficult to hone in on them when the noise
mm,
outside is constantly blaring, work, the phone. Don't get me wrong, I'm by the way, everyone who's listening, I'm not cussing you because I'm attached to my iPhone. Like, no,
yeah.
but
Me too. Make that too.
right, me iPhone, yes. But it's like, still, it's how do we make the space
mm,
able to listen and hone in on what we're good at? And I think,
yeah.
I think that's in fact, you just finished your master's. I'm gonna make you answer that question.
How do we hone? Sorry,
Answer it.
repeat the question for me. Have I to make sure I've understood that correctly?
How would you recommend that people, myself, you, how do you hone in, silence out the background noise to find your
Mm,
voice and then hone in on them?
yeah, no, it's a great question. Not an easy thing to do.
It isn't.
It isn't, because it does require a level of, back to what you said about boundaries and consistency. One thing I like to do personally is to mute notifications. So I will mute my WhatsApp, mute my Instagram. It just gives me a level of control back, where I'm not just reacting because something's popped up on my Instagram, or I'm just not
Right,
in
right.
the app, just scrolling through. It's like I can intentionally choose to go into the app as and when I feel that I want to. And so that's one thing that helps me manage and mitigate, let's say, the noise, because there's a lot of influx of noise, especially as we are on lockdown in the UK. And because of that, it's easy just to sort of fall in the trap of what's available. Let me look outwards versus let me just pause. And back to what I said earlier about being still, like this is such a great opportunity to be still, because physically, yes, we're not able to go out, but that's how can we just create that stillness in our minds? So that's one thing I do to manage the noise. In terms of the strength aspects of things, for me, I've been writing a lot of poetry during the lockdown, and but it's unpressured, right? It's not like I have to have a
Right.
poem out week by week and put that pressure on it or put a deadline on it. It's really because I'm able to give myself that space. It allows almost like my creative juices to naturally show up,
Mhm.
because I've created room for it. And that is, again, it becomes an organic journey where I can express myself. I like to call myself a, a creative expresser, because I will do things in book form, I will do things in calendar form, which I'll share more about later, and different things like that. So it's a case of slowing down the noise, whatever works for you, whether that's muting notifications, whether your phone has to physically be in a different room, and just whatever those things might be that help you feel like you are regaining control and that you are not being reactive. And I think a way to do that is asking some key questions to shift from autopilot to being intentional. So when you're like quickly grabbing your phone, like how is this helping me in this moment in time? Do I need to do this right now? Will this matter in 5 minutes? Will this matter in 5 hours? Asking yourself different questions just to help you intentionally pause and just check in that you're not reacting and that you are choosing to be on Instagram if that's what you're choosing to be in that moment in time. Right. So those are the things that help me. There are great free resources online to actually assess your strengths as well. So the likes of Wing Finder is a great free resource where you can go through an assessment for about 40 minutes and it shares more about, you get your results of what your top 4 strengths are, I think, and it breaks down how you can use your strengths in whatever it is that you're currently doing. So that's a great resource.
I know, but I really like that because I mean, I wasn't, you went really detailed, which was awesome, because I was going to say to you, but the real point is that everything you're doing is an act. You've made a conscious decision to do those things. You've said, hey, I am going to do this because, I mean, I read a book, it's a German book, but it's talking about the art of living a creative life. If anyone else can hear, if anyone here can read German, it's by a guy called Franz Berbach. And he made some really good points how to tune out during the day. And I started, it made so much of a difference. And it was really simple. He said, every single hour, walk away from your screen, make yourself a cup of tea. And just think about something else that's not your work. And at the beginning, I couldn't do it because I was thinking like, and I'd bring my phone and I was thinking, okay, well, let me just quick, no, that's not the point. And no, seriously, literally, I'd be like, first of all, I'd be like, yeah, let me go make myself a cup of tea. Then I make myself a cup of tea, have my phone. It's like, no, but this is not the point. And it took so much effort. And believe it or not, like I didn't ever get there 100%. Like I couldn't do it every day continuously because it's just so difficult. But as you said, it's really having to train ourselves.
Yeah, because it's a habit, right?
It's a self-discipline.
Yeah, self-discipline, exactly.
Difficult things to master, because tuning out the noise is one of the hardest things to do. My mom always says to me when it comes to kind of my phone is that if it's a real emergency, you will get a call. That for me put everything into perspective. If it's
that's a good one.
You will get a call. So when your phone's and you look in and you can see messages, it is an emergency unless someone picks up the phone and say, hey, Leanne.
Exactly.
But we're so tuned in to kind of thinking that we have to be reactive to be, and when I say also reactive, this isn't just on the phone, this is also just with work. We've been so if someone sends you an email, I've got to respond to you within 2 minutes. The question is why?
Yeah.
And I think
what happens if you don't?
Right. And I think once we learn how to give ourselves the space, we give ourselves the space to flourish. We give ourselves the space to really contemplate, because the reality is that we as Black women, the one thing we're never really allowed is space. We're not allowed all the freedom. And what you said before is we have to take it. We can't wait for somebody to give it to us. We have to really take it. So true. And the taking it is the hard part. I mean, there's no way around it. It's so difficult. And it's something I'm constantly and continuously learning to take my space, to take my moment, to do all these things so that I can flourish and be nourished and then thrive. Otherwise, it doesn't work as much as I've tried. It doesn't work in the way you want it to.
Exactly, because the order is wrong, right? It's like you have to fuel yourself first so that your cup is full, be able to pour out into others, your family, your kids, etc. I was listening to one of Michelle Obama's podcasts last week, and she was interviewing her mentees, and she talks about the Black woman having to pick up the pieces and always just being on guard, and looking at history where Black men were incarcerated and things like that. The Black woman was always had to always be ready to just keep things going, keep things moving. So we're just so used to, by default, always being in motion, always having something going on that we have to take care of, respond to, act upon, etc. So when we're pausing and when we're like being still and intentionally being silent, it's almost unfamiliar because we're thinking something, we should be doing something right now. Something should be happening right now. I need to respond to something right now. And for us, it can take some getting used to because it's not a space that we naturally operate in. And just, I think by default, we're just used to doing. We're used to being in motion. We're used to moving things in a particular direction. So it is something that is unfamiliar, but doesn't mean that it cannot become familiar. And it takes training, like you said. And it's one of those things where, you know, if you were to say, let me just give myself 5 minutes of each day, see how I find that, see how I feel, see how it makes me feel. And again, because how your feelings, how you respond in terms of your thoughts, they connect to how you're feeling, right? So if that's a good feeling, how can you honor that more frequently, perhaps like doing it every day for 5 minutes or a couple of days out of the week, and just go at your own pace. It's not about trying to hit a particular target or anything like that and putting any type of goals or pressures around you. It is really about how do you step into that and walk into it in your own lane, at your own pace, and seeing what works for you. Keep checking in, keep reflecting back and just asking those key questions.
Absolutely. I love that. Keep checking in and keep asking those key questions. And I also believe that there's a lot to be said. Going back to your point of being intentional and how you use your energy, it's also surrounding yourself by people who affirm that back to you in the sense of, you know, as I said before, when I thought mantras and affirmations were all mumbo jumbo, I'm sure that a lot of people who were talking back to me were agreeing with me. There's probably like one or two, yeah, and it's not mumbo jumbo. And I'm like, yeah. It's also that being with people who understand, you know, there's an implicit understanding between friends, which is like, if your friend gets annoyed at you because you didn't understand, they didn't like the fact that you didn't respond within 5 minutes, then something has to change in that friendship.
Right, exactly. Something needs to be addressed.
Right, because you're putting your urgencies and your need for a response on me. So as you said, it's being intentional about how we surround ourselves. It's being intentional how we fuel ourselves. And I love this as well. Absolutely, Sandra. So important. Thoughts create reality, and love that you emphasize going at our own pace without pressure.
Yeah.
We don't have to do it at the same speed, but we absolutely have to make sure that whatever it is we are doing it intentionally.
Yeah, exactly. And I think where you spoke about your community, you know, your tribe, your friends, I think there's a saying, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but a saying about, you know, if you want to know who somebody is,
show me your friends, show me
your friends.
Right.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that one. So exactly, like show me your friends or show me your closest 5 friends.
Yeah. Should have said it now.
So that in of itself, you know, back to, like I said at the beginning, like what is influencing you, who is influencing you also, you know, and are you being intentional with who you're allowed to be in your life and who you're allowed to occupy that space, because that space is precious, it's yours. And so it's going back to where you talked about choice throughout this conversation, like everything you are doing is a choice, right? And so where you are today are because of the choices that you have made so far. And it's there's a guy that I follow on Instagram called Rob Hill, and he talks about you're one choice away from a different life or something along those lines, which I absolutely love. And so having people in your wing women, your wingmen, in your circle, just making sure that those people are fueling you as well, because like I said, we're not always feeling positive, we're not always having that energy where we can continuously uplift ourselves by ourselves. We do need to have people fuel us also. So making sure that you've got people around you that can pour into your tank when it is a little low, as and when you need it, and vice versa, because that is friendship to me anyway. It's about that exchange and just knowing where you can draw upon from someone else and they can draw from you as well.
Exchange and the challenge and someone pushing you to be a version of yourself, and someone supporting.
That's just important. Yeah.
Saying to them, do you know what? I want to try something completely new.
Yeah.
And they come and sit down with you and they say, hold on then, let's plan it out. Let me play devil's advocate. Let me tell you all the things that could go wrong, but let me tell you all the things that could go right.
Yeah, that question. We don't ask that question enough.
Right. It's not, you know, you need, I mean, I'm going to put this comment back up again, but you don't want to be on your own. You don't want to be on your own. You want to be able
Yeah.
to share your glory, your happy, your success with others, because it's contra to what your whole thing is. If your mission and your purpose is to make an impact to, in the world, to a broader community, how ironic would it be if you're doing that alone?
Right. And we're not designed that way. We're social beings. And this is why, lockdown has been very difficult, because we naturally like to connect. That is just the way that we ourselves are able to thrive and flourish, because we are able to exchange and pour in and also uplift. So that is so important that we connect in that way, and that those connections are good for us as well. And that we've got people that are bringing healthy connections into our lives. So it is so important.
No, I did, like 100%. I like healthy connections, healthy living, and also finding the ways to live out. I was reading an article about architecture and the design of houses, and how, when you don't have enough light, enough space,
Yeah.
very confining. But then also on top of that, it talks about what makes a good healthy lifestyle, and part of that is coming into contact with other people, and that's why the
Mm.
lockdown fundamentally is so difficult. But
Yeah.
this is even more why it's important that we have the quality of contacts. It's
Yeah.
that you don't want to be sitting down on the phone talking to someone who's just draining you emotionally, not be as we said before, anger has its place, and
Yeah.
points are valid as to what we're experiencing. But
Yeah.
when we're talking, it has to be about moving forward.
Yeah.
What am the question? What am I doing? What am I doing to make a change? I'm cussing about it, but what am I doing to actually try and change it?
Right. And shift that needle forward.
What
Yeah.
what am I doing? And that's how we have to start investing our energy. And we both said it before, it's difficult to make changes and cut people out of your lives, but fundamentally, if they're not going to bring you, or when I say bring you, not physically, but support you on
Mm.
your journey to fulfill your purpose, then I don't think they ultimately have a place in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like I said, it's not about that being a good thing or a bad thing. That friendship had its place, and that's what that is. It's like everything that we go through has had a time and place, on where we move on from jobs, where we move into a new home, move to a different country, whatever that might be, everything had its place. So just honor the great things that perhaps came from that particular friendship or that experience, because it definitely has played a part into who you are as an individual and how you show up in the world. At the same time, it's like recognizing there's more of that to come, but it's going to just show up in a different way now.
Right, right. And that's really the end of the game, is that we're going to keep showing up. We're going
Yep.
to keep pushing forward. We're going to keep
Mhm.
doing what we need to do, but we're also going to keep doing it in a way that is positive and uplifting.
Yeah.
It's not about, what did they say? It's not about trying to dim somebody else's light because it doesn't make you shine brighter. It's
Right.
making the space. It's about knocking down walls to ensure that our light even makes it outside. Because at the moment,
Exactly.
is being hidden, and
Yeah.
this is what it's about. People need to see, accept, and recognize who we are and what we are. Because as I
Yeah.
always, a black woman who's got all of her stuff together is a force to be reckoned with, and that's
Absolutely.
for me, is what I want to keep seeing. And in order to do that, just like you, it's providing the space, the
Mhm.
tool, mechanisms, the outlet for us
Yeah.
to be able to really nourish, cherish, evolve, just giving ourselves the space to do it. Because
Yeah.
what the black woman always has, I'm not going to swear in case my mom watches. Yeah, I know I'm 36. I know. Um, the black woman always has crap to do.
Mhm. A lot of
Right,
crap.
right.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like, no, we need to, the first thing we have to do is take care of ourselves.
100%. 100%. Take care. That for me, if you don't get anything from this conversation, take that one line. Take care of yourself, because honestly, that in of itself, that is an opener to be able to do everything else that you perhaps desire to do. But if you haven't poured into yourself first and foremost, everything else is just going to wait. And that's important that we recognize the order, and that
Yep.
we work with the order, so that we're able to serve ourselves, so that we're able to serve others from
Right.
ourselves. It's so important.
And we have to keep pushing forward for it to be okay.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's self-love isn't selfish. We have to be clear that it's okay to do this, because
Yeah,
only then, if we are healthy inside, then we will look for healthy connections like this. We will look for
right,
ways to express ourselves, to basically say, hey, we want to do something where we come forward together. Now, we don't know what that's going to look like.
right. And that's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay. Yeah.
We just have to keep pushing forward.
Keep taking the stepping stones.
I like that. Keep taking the stepping stones to get to the point where we want to get to.
Yeah,
Most importantly, but not alone.
yeah, definitely.
Most importantly, not alone. So, Sandra, it's been
This has
awesome.
been, this has been beautiful. Thank you so much, Leanne, for having me.
No, it's been a pleasure. So you have to tell everybody where they can find you.
Yes. So if you use LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. Full name is Sandra Berko, Berko. I'm also on Instagram. You can find me at sb.vision.com. No, that's not an Instagram handle. We'll try that again. You can find me on Instagram.
I didn't want to have you up like that. I was like, oh, I didn't know that.
I was like, .com? No, sb.vision. And as I mentioned, my website is sb-vision.com. And you can literally pick up Sankofa from my website. And also, I'll quickly do a shameless plug. I've released my calendars for 2021. You know, I did warn you about this, Leanne. I did warn you.
You warn me about your shamelessness.
I did say I'm just gonna have to do it while we're here, guys. While we're here, ladies and gents.
Trust you. I'm just gonna laugh. I'm just gonna laugh and say, you warn me about your shamelessness. I didn't know the extent to which you plan to be shameless. But
I mean,
I didn't realize you've got the goods.
The new year is upon us. 2021 is literally around the corner. So where we have talked about keeping our tanks full, this is about a lots of SB nuggets just to keep reinforcing positive affirmations to stay with you throughout the year. So you can also find that on my website as well. But thank you so much for taking the time to join us, everyone, and your comments were so rich. Thank you so much.
It's been amazing, Sandra. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's been nice to have an amazing conversation, taking a bit of positive,
so beautiful
there, taking it and keeping it as always. Well, it's not global, but I'm on the mainland.
Love it.
Thank you, everyone, and
thank you
again.
Yeah.
Soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the week and weekend, and look after yourselves.
Yep. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.